Dear friends, I'm absolutely delighted to have the opportunity to sit together with you this evening. I hope that wherever you are, as you're listening to this talk, you're feeling at ease and joyful in body and mind. Many years ago, when I was Thich Nhat Hanh's attendant, he said something interesting to me. He said to me, Brother Phap, as practitioners, if we're truly aware, then there's nothing that's not the Dharma. There's nothing that's not a teaching. So from that point on, I took that teaching from Thich to heart. And whenever I go through my day, I have my antenna out for moments of Dharma, moments in which I'm able to open my heart just a little bit more. I remember in 1999, I was asked to lead a day of mindfulness in the English town of Norwich. And we had a beautiful day in a local community center. As part of the day, I led the group outside for a walking meditation to a local park. We were walking in silence and mindfully, just enjoying the opportunity to hear the sound of the wind and to be able to enjoy walking as a community. On the way to the park, two young teenage boys were riding their bikes, and they took a look at us, and the bikes screeched to a halt, and the teenage boys stood there looking at us. I guess they'd never seen anything quite like our group walking in mindfulness. And after a few seconds, it became too much for one of those young boys, and he called out, "So what's all this in aid of then?" Now, I thought that this was a very important and powerful question. I feel that it's a question that we as practitioners need to be asking ourselves constantly, that we need to be looking into constantly. Why are we a practitioner? What was that deep longing, that ache of the heart that brought us to practice? And more importantly, what exactly are we practicing? What exactly is our practice in each and every moment of our day? In this way, our practice, rather than being something amorphous, something vague, becomes something incredibly concrete, becomes something that's a lived reality in each and every moment. In Buddhist practice, particularly in the Mahayana school, we don't approach our practice from the perspective that we're broken and we need to be fixed. We're not trying to become something or someone other than who we really are. There's an interesting story told in the commentaries that after the Buddha had his awakening experience, that the first thing that he said was, "How strange. Every living being has this capacity, this place in their heart that's unobstructed." And so from the Mahayana perspective, our practice is a practice of uncovering that place of goodness, that place of insight, that unobstructed mind that's already there, that's been there all along, but has somehow gotten covered over. To uncover these pockets of goodness that are in us and in all beings already. One of the greatest teachers in my own spiritual lineage, Master Rinzai, once said that the aim of spiritual practice or the aim of meditation practice is to become a real human being. To be able to walk on the earth of our own lived experience. To not walk on clouds or on water. In fact, he said to walk on clouds or to walk on water, that's not a miracle. The real miracle is to be able to walk on the earth. To be fully present for what is, and to give up all of our running, all of our seeking after something that we think will cover over or fix this ache in our heart. So to become a real human being seems to some of us to be almost antithetical to the practice of spirituality, particularly if we equate spirituality with transcendence. But from the Buddhist perspective, spiritual practice is not about transcendence, not about rising above our everyday experience, but about transformation, about entering deeply into our everyday experience and discovering wisdom right in the heart of it. This is what is meant on a deep level by engaged Buddhism. engaging with each and every moment of our daily life just as it is, as our spiritual practice, as a moment to wake up. Whether we're in traffic, whether we're in lockdown, whether we're in the checkout line, each and every moment that might be described as being absolutely ordinary can be extraordinary. This is the power of an innate energy that we all have, that in English we call mindfulness. To be honest, I don't like the word mindfulness as a translation for this quality of presence of mind and heart that in the original Pali language is called sati. This is because in our modern society we've grown up with the idea that mind is somehow up here. In fact, if I ask you to point to your mind, unless you're being quite zen about the whole situation, most of us would point up here. Now let's try an experiment, because I really feel that our bodies are some of the greatest teachers that we'll ever meet. Let's imagine that we're in a classroom and I'm writing an equation on the board and you haven't studied at all, and suddenly I call out your name to come up and solve the equation on the board, and you say, "Who, me?" and then point to yourself. Let's do that for a moment. Let's point to ourselves. Okay. Now just take a moment to notice where you're pointing. Very few of you, when you're pointing to yourself, will be pointing here. Most of you will instinctively point to your heart area, to the center of your being. This is not just a fun game, but this is an important reminder. In the Vedic philosophy of the Buddha's time, the seat of consciousness was not seen to be the brain as we would tend to see it today. It was actually seen to be the heart. There are many reasons for this, which are beyond the scope of our talk this evening. But we know that in modern days, we've discovered that the heart consists of 60% neural cells. Now, of course, there's a lot of debate about what that actually means, but on a fundamental level, we know that the heart, just like all parts of our body, have a form of consciousness. Basically, in the Vedic philosophy of the Buddha's time, they felt that if your heart stopped beating, then consciousness would leave the body. So that's why the heart was seen to be the fundamental base of consciousness. This tendency of equating mind and heart and not having a separation as we tend to have in the West continues on through a number of the Asian languages. If you speak Chinese, you'll know that the character for mind and heart is the same. The same in Vietnamese, the word for mind and heart is the same. You need to have an additional character or an additional word to distinguish whether you're speaking about mind as consciousness or heart as a physical location or an emotion. This is helpful medicine for us in the West, because often we equate mindfulness with an intellectual energy, or we equate samadhi, concentration, as an intellectual concentration, when in fact it's equally valid in a sense, and perhaps good medicine for us in the West, to understand sati more as a sense of heartfulness, in the sense of a full-bodied awareness, an embodied awareness, coming back to an awareness of our body, an awareness of our emotions, awareness of our feelings, rather than only an analytical concentration up here. Mindfulness gives rise to an energy, a quality that we call samadhi, which is translated as concentration. In fact, if you consider how we view concentration in the West or in modern society, it doesn't feel very refreshing. Let's imagine you're studying for the bar exam, or you're studying for the HSC or something. You don't feel very refreshed after that kind of concentration. Meditative concentration, just like the energy of mindfulness, is quite different. It's not only a mental energy up here, but a full-bodied awareness. Concentration in Buddhism is described as being deeply refreshing, like plunging into a cool lake on a warm day. It can be very good medicine for our times to consider mindfulness in terms of this full-bodied awareness that we can quite validly translate sati as heartfulness. A few years ago, this was quite a few years ago now, maybe 20 years ago, we were sitting in the meditation hall in Upper Hamlet of Plum Village, waiting for our teacher to give a Dharma talk, and he began his Dharma talk, and then it began raining. Now I should say that rain in the south of France, particularly around Bordeaux, which is not that unusual, but for some reason that day, Tay stopped giving his Dharma talk. And he said to the community, everybody should go and open windows, open doors, and go and sit and listen to the rain. So we all just went and we sat near windows or out on the veranda and just listened to the rain. The loud drops, the soft drops, all the different sounds that were occurring. Now I realized at that moment in time that Tay wasn't just asking us to listen to the rain for the sake of listening to the rain, although that is already a very deep practice. What he was asking us to do was to open a space of availability, to listen to our lives. When you choose to listen fully, you're opening a space of availability to what is. You're not evaluating, you're not judging, you're not reacting, you're just simply there. And this capacity to listen is truly the heart of meditation. This sense of opening a space of availability for what is already happening in body and mind. Let us approach our meditation practice from the perspective of listening. Listening not only with our ears, but listening with our eyes, listening with our nose, listening with our tongue, listening with our whole body, of engaging with what is right in each and every moment. A few years ago, I was asked to lead a course at the University of Montana in Missoula. And I was walking around the campus and a young guy came up to me. Oftentimes when we're wearing a monastic robe, it's an invitation for people to come up and say all kinds of things that are on their mind. So he saw me and he came right up to me and said, "What's the meaning of life then?" Another very good question. And in fact, it's a question that most of us have. But like many good questions, sometimes the way we ask it can prevent us from touching deep wisdom that's just a little bit outside of our grasp. That's the way that that young fellow asked the question is the way that many of us ask that question, the way that many of us approach this question of deeper meaning in our life. But the Buddhist way to ask that question, the Buddhist way to engage with that question is quite different. The way that as meditation practitioners we would want to engage with that question, rather than just asking the question of what's the meaning of life and presupposing that there's some meaning outside of ourselves somewhere that's preordained. As Buddhists, we would want to approach the question from the perspective of how do I bring meaning to my life? How do I live this moment or each moment of my life in such a way that it's the most meaningful and most beautiful moment that I've encountered up until now? We can't always, or even very often in our lives, choose our circumstances. But the freedom we have as human beings is to be able to choose to live this moment in such a way that it becomes a deep moment, a moment in which we come fully to life, a moment in which we're able to touch things just a little bit more deeply. In that way, each moment becomes a meaningful moment, becomes a moment that's incredibly rich, incredibly deep.